All right, let's be blunt. For the past 2 years, the entire market has been obsessed with one single trade: copper. The story around data centers, the energy transition, well, it's pretty well understood by now. And frankly, the easy money has been made. That consensus trade, it's over. So for us, the real work starts right now. We need to identify the next group of critical materials, the ones that are mispriced, misunderstood, and just on the verge of their own multi-year supercycle. So that's the big question, right? We're not interested in looking in the rearview mirror. This update is all about figuring out the true inflection points in the resource sector for the next 5, even 10 years. It's about skating to where the puck is going. So let's get into it. Our entire thesis is built on what we're calling the Trinity of Demand acceleration. We're talking about 3 massive, non-negotiable forces. First, you've got the physical build-out of AI infrastructure. It's happening, it's real. Second, the return of great power conflict, which is forcing a total reindustrialization of our defense supply chains. And third, the absolutely colossal overhaul of the global energy grid. Look, these aren't just cyclical trends. These are fundamental, structural shifts in demand. Okay, so that brings us to the main event, our 4 top candidates. We're looking at tin, silver, antimony, and uranium. Now, what's so fascinating about this group is they all share the same DNA. In their most important uses, you just can't substitute them. Their supply chains are all geopolitically choked, meaning they're concentrated in places we'd rather they weren't. And on top of all that, they've all been starved of investment for over a decade. You put those things together, and you've got an absolutely explosive cocktail just waiting to go off. All right, first up, let's dive into the materials that are literally forming the physical backbone of the AI revolution. That's tin and silver. The market is still looking at these two through a really old, outdated lens. And you know what? That's exactly where we see the opportunity. You know, the reason the market gets tin so wrong is because it still thinks it's all about iPhone sales. But look at this comparison. It tells you everything. In iPhone, it uses milligrams of tin solder. In NVIDIA AI server rack, it uses kilograms. That's not just an increase. That is an orders of magnitude leap in consumption that all the old models are completely missing. And there is no substitute for tin solder when it comes to high-performance computing, period. And get this, while all that demand is revving up, the supply side is just getting hammered. The world's biggest tin mine, Ma in Myanmar, which is a critical supplier to China, has basically shut down. Exports have cratered 77% year over year. This isn't some temporary glitch, folks. This is a structural shock, removing a huge piece of global supply right when we need it most. So how do we play this? The list of investable companies is small, which gives us incredible leverage. First up, Malaysia Smelting Corp, ticker MSC. This is a geopolitical play. As the key non-Chinese smelter, it becomes a strategic asset for any company trying to friend-shore its supply chain. Next is Alphamin Resources, AFM. Think of this as the pure margin play. They've got the world's highest grade mine down in the DRC, which gives them a cost advantage that is just second to none. And finally, for jurisdictional safety, we have Metals X, MLX. They're a top-tier producer in Australia, making them the go-to for any fund that can't touch geopolitical risk. Okay, next up is silver. Now, I need you to forget everything you think about silver as a precious metal, just for a moment. Instead, think of it as the single most critical industrial commodity on Earth. Why? It's the most conductive element we have. And in a world that is electrifying absolutely everything, that property is completely non-negotiable. Now, here's the critical problem on the supply side. We call it the inelasticity trap. As you can see, more than 70% of all silver is just a byproduct from lead, zinc, and copper mines. What that means is silver supply can't really respond to higher silver prices. A giant copper miner isn't going to turn their whole operation upside down for a metal that's basically a rounding error on their P&L. Supply is stuck. At the exact same time, demand is just exploding from multiple directions. 1. The move to new, more efficient solar cells, well, they happen to use 50 to 80% more silver. 2. AI servers, 5G towers, they all need silver for its conductivity. 3. Electric vehicles use almost twice as much silver as a gas-powered car. So what's the result of all this? The silver market has been in a structural deficit for 5 years straight. To get exposure here, we're taking 3 very different angles. For your blue chip major, you've got Pan American Silver, ticker PAAS. They have diversified production plus a massive dormant mine called Escobal that's basically a free call option on higher prices. For domestic security, we like Hecla Mining, HL. It's the biggest producer in the US, which gives it a strategic Made in USA premium. And for a really clever tech angle, we have Daejo Electronic Materials, a Korean company, ticker 078600. They don't mine silver, they make the silver paste that goes into solar cells. It's a fantastic picks and shovels way to play the solar boom. Okay, that brings us to our second group of metals, and these are a different beast altogether. Here, the investment thesis isn't just about economics, it's about geopolitics. We're talking about materials that are absolutely essential for national defense and energy sovereignty. Look at this number, 100%. That says it all, doesn't it? The United States is 100% dependent on imports for antimony. And what is it? It's a material that is absolutely critical for making munitions. It hardens lead in bullets. It's used in primers. Bottom line, without it, you can't make effective ammunition. It is a terrifying vulnerability, especially when China and Russia control most of the world's supply. The number of ways to invest here is tiny, which creates extreme scarcity value. The key asset is Perpetua Resources, PPTA. They own the Stibnite project in Idaho. And I mean this, it is the only large-scale domestic source of antimony. This isn't just a mine, it's a strategic national asset. Then you have the processing choke point, United States Antimony, UAMY, which operates the only smelter in the US. And for a bit of diversification, we look to Larvotto Resources, LRV, which is developing a great project in a friendly country, Australia. This quote just nails the new reality for our final candidate, uranium. The insatiable demand for 24/7 carbon-free power for data centers has forced big tech to embrace nuclear. And you have to understand, these guys, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they aren't like old-school utilities. They are not fighting over a tenth of a cent. They are desperate for security of supply, and they will pay up to get it. So the uranium market is getting squeezed from both ends. It's a classic setup. On the supply side, Kazakhstan, the world's biggest producer, is cutting back. And the West is finally banning Russian enrichment, which cuts us off from nearly 40% of global capacity. At the same time, on the demand side, you have this brand new price-insensitive buyer in big tech, plus you're getting bonus demand from old reactors like 3 Mile Island suddenly coming back online. It's a textbook supply-demand collision. Our strategy here is a barbell. On one side, you own the giant. On the other, the disruptor. The giant is Cameco, ticker CCJ. It's the Exxon of uranium, the go-to Western champion, and the obvious energy partner for big tech. On the other side of the barbell, you have the critical technology plays. That's Silex Systems, SLX, which owns next-gen laser enrichment technology, a vital asset for U.S. energy independence. And then there's Centrus Energy, LEU. They are the only company in the U.S. licensed to produce something called HALEU fuel, which is the specific high-octane fuel needed for all the next-gen small modular reactors. Okay, so we've laid out all the pieces, the candidates, the supply shocks, the demand drivers. Let's put it all together now and talk about how we're actually building a portfolio to capture this new supercycle. Now, first, we have to be smart about the risks. Nothing is a sure thing. For silver, there's a long-term risk of substitution with copper and solar panels. For antimony, getting a project like Stibnite permitted is always a battle. And of course, geopolitics could change. A sudden thaw in US-China relations would impact the antimony thesis. And a major nuclear accident would obviously hit uranium hard. These are the things we have our eyes on every single day. So here it is. This is our final synthesized allocation for the fund. We're overweighting the AI and industrial themes. That means a 30% weighting to uranium and enrichment, led by our top picks CCJ and SLX, and another 30% to silver, focused on PAAS and HL. We're splitting the remaining 40% evenly. We've got 20% going to tin, with MSC and AFM as our stealth tech play, and a final 20% to antimony, where PPTA is our pure geopolitical hedge. The old days of just buying a basket of commodities and calling it a day, those are over. This new cycle, it demands precision. So the final question I'll leave you with is this. Is your portfolio actually positioned for this convergence of technological destiny and geopolitical reality? Because we are convinced that is where the most powerful opportunities of the next decade are going to be found.